I died because I cheated on my wife. I didn't know I would die from betraying her, but I ended up passing away. My name is Nicolas Pierre. Allow me to tell my tragic life story. How a betrayal could cost my own life. It all started when my wife said she would have to travel for work at the request of her boss to solve a problem the company she worked for was facing. As soon as she made the announcement, I felt it would be an opportunity to be free again, because after almost 12 years of marriage, I felt somewhat chained by not being able to do anything on my own. So I informed my single friends at work that my wife would be traveling for a few days, and I would be free to do whatever I wanted during that time. Finally, the day my wife was to travel had come. I took her to the airport, wished her a good trip, and said goodbye. But I didn't know I would bitterly regret that time away from my wife, as it would result in my death. On the first day away from my wife, which was a Saturday, I made plans with my friends to go to a nightclub. At first, I had planned to go to the club just to have fun with my friends, with no intention of betraying my wife. However, when we arrived at that same club, a beautiful and charming woman started looking in my direction constantly, without even trying to hide it, until she approached with a friend and asked if I was single. At first, I said no, that I had a commitment. But as the night went on, my friends started saying that I couldn't let a woman like that slip away, and that I should go talk to her. And if something happened between us, my wife would never know. So I gathered my courage and went up to that beautiful and charming woman who had been looking at me all night. It was quick, because as soon as I approached to say something in her ear, she simply turned and kissed me. Today, I can say that was the kiss of death itself. Leaving the club, she invited me to go to her house in a neighboring town. But since my house was nearby and empty due to my wife's trip, I thought it would be better to go to my own house. It was already dawn and no one would see her coming in with me. The night was wonderful. I didn't feel so guilty for cheating on my wife because I also didn't know what she was doing on her work trip. But I made it clear to Olivia, the woman from the club, that everything that happened between us that night wouldn't happen again because I was married and loved my wife. She just smiled wryly and said she didn't need me to drive her home, that she would take a taxi. So we said goodbye and never saw each other again. After my wife returned from her trip, I acted as if nothing wrong had happened, and she never discovered or suspected anything about my betrayal. But over the course of almost 4 years after the betrayal, I began to feel unwell. I was almost always sick, with a fever, weakness, and no appetite. So I decided to see a doctor for some routine tests to find out what was wrong with my health. Unfortunately, the results were the worst possible. I was diagnosed with advanced HIV positive. I panicked immediately and wanted to understand how I had acquired this disease. That's when I remembered that on the night I cheated on my wife, I didn't use protection. So without telling anyone, I went after Olivia, the woman from the club who had supposedly transmitted the disease to me, and found out that she had died a year after we had met that night. I had to tell my wife the whole truth, so she could get tested to find out if she was also sick. Unfortunately, she was also diagnosed with HIV, but her stage wasn't as advanced, and she could live a normal life by following the treatment. Immediately, she asked for a divorce. I even suggested to her that we stay together, since we were both sick, but she said no and left me. And she left me and didn't want to take care of me at my worst, because my condition was critical, and the disease progressed quickly, leading to my death in a short time. May my story serve as a warning to people who get involved with others without protection, because it doesn't matter if the person is ugly or beautiful, rich or poor, since we can't know if the person we're getting involved with has the disease or not. And if you like to do this, using protection can prevent the next person to die from being you. So, protect yourself.